So my name is Gamil Gran. I'm with Mayfield, and Mayfield is an early stage venture capital fund here in the Valley. We've been around now 50 more years. And one of the great things that I have an opportunity to do at Mayfield is spend time with true operators, that is CIOs who actually run technology operations at scale. And I've got three of my best friends here who are going to help dive into a dialogue about what the real role of making AI real in functional businesses, functional operations, sort of that whole process of taking the idea, that use case, and making it transactionally scalable and high impact across the organization. So that's what we're going to dive into. We'd love to get some questions at the end as well. I'm going to start by asking each of the panelists here to introduce themselves. They're all great friends, so they'll all be really nice to me, I'm sure, with great answers. Sharon, would you mind introducing yourself? You're at Juniper today. Give a little bit of background, but then share as part of your introduction, what's the big obstacle for you as a CIO to make AI real right now?
Okay. So I'm Sharon Mandel. I'm the CIO of Juniper Networks, which was recently acquired by HPE. But we say we do networking for AI. So that is building hardware and software that goes into AI clusters to drive the network using Ethernet instead of InfiniBand. But for a long time, we've been doing AI for networking. So in 2019, Juniper acquired a company called Mist. And so I've had the benefit of having AI run part of my operation and a very foundational and fundamental part of my operation without many of the things we've all come to, start talking about. I have an agent in my network, but it's not an employee yet, and it's, so there's a lot of stuff we've been doing, so you can accomplish many things without many of the things we're going to talk about today, but then there's certain places where you probably can't go without things that have not yet been built. So, and for me, the biggest obstacle, it's always people, right? My job is people, process, technology.
There's an order of that, right?
Right. The process, and if I was to go in order of what's most difficult, it's people, then process. People have a very hard time envisioning doing things differently. So getting to a process that's truly optimized is very hard for people to define, in my experience. And then if you can get both of those other two things in line, the technology tends to fall out a lot more easily. But it's very difficult if the front two aren't moving.
Great, welcome. Saket.
All right, thanks for having me here. I'm Saket Srivastava. I'm the CIO at Asana. Asana is a collaborative work management platform. And the way we think of ourselves is a platform wherein you can coordinate all sorts of work. And the data model behind that, we call it the work graph data model. What it lends to is, now if you have all the context around data, you can apply AI to it and you can get better results from AI, right? So be it at a foundational level at tasks or at company level goals, you're able to manage all of that work and then create the workflows around that using AI and agentic stuff as well. To your question around obstacles, I would have also answered that it's any sort of change. I'll maybe frame it this way. When we talk about transformation, right, our eyes roll over because we hear a lot about transformation, but AI is truly transformation with maybe a capital T, right? And it is a harder transformation, especially because so much of it is changing and changing so fast, right? So yes, there's this people, process, technology aspect to it. Technology is changing by the hour here. It's finding that balance of quick wins and leading from the top. I think that is very important. I found myself in a situation wherein at the start of this journey, we, I think, did a pretty good job at training and setting the right expectations with people. But then somewhere along the way, our people heard enough about, hey, AI is great and AI is going to change our lives, but we didn't exactly show them how. And so then the next phase was all about how do we have each one of the functional leaders, while the CIO is sort of the de facto person driving this across the organization, how do you get the functional leaders lined up to also be owning outcomes that you can work towards and then measure and show your people that this is for our collective good and it's not some experimentation that we're just trying through.
Great. I'd love to unpack that, but Naveen, welcome. Introduce yourself, please.
Good morning. I'm Naveen Zulci. I'm the CIO at Databricks. Our mission for the last 12 years has been to democratize data and AI globally. We have around 20,000 customers now, and we build the data platforms that run on all the three major clouds. And we also make available all the AI models that you can leverage. I think the biggest obstacle that we are facing right now is this mismatch between what is expected of the solutions from AI to what is actually capable of, what we are capable of doing today. And so maybe in the short term, the transformation has its fits and starts as a result of that. And in the long term, there is going to be a secular trend which is going to transform the industry quite significantly. But in the short term, there is this impedance mismatch between what is available versus what we can do in enterprises especially.
So I'd love to unpack the transformational problem statement that Saket recommended or suggested. There was a recent report that came out from MIT that suggested 95% of projects aren't impacting ROI successfully, and I'm curious to dive into that. It further talks about the fact that many organizations are deploying use cases that are relatively lightweight, not actually true transformational. So to your transformational question, what is the answer to that? How do you get alignment? And this goes back to the people issue that Sharon highlighted as well, so I'd love your input.
Yeah, well, I think it starts at the top. And as you said, what are the expectations, right? So at Juniper, my CEO, Rami Rahim, he fundamentally believes that this is going to turn our world inside out. That's why he bought an AI company in 2019. But, you know, when the LLM, ChatGPT moment happened, he even doubled down on that belief. And as we often see with any transformation, the expectations of what it are going to do in the short term are too high, and in the long term are probably too low because we just can't imagine what we haven't seen before. So in our company, it took a little while. I mean, I had a story where, he put our CTO in charge of driving some of the adoption in the company. I was working closely with him. We didn't want to spend a lot of money on it early on. We were going through an acquisition, so how much you were going to invest for things that might not last was a question. But then he's on the board of another company, and he went there and he saw a demo and heard from one of the engineers that was built in 2 weeks. Right?
There you go.
And he came back, and at our next staff meeting, he looked at me and Raj and was like, "What the hell are you guys doing?" Right? And so
Water table rising.
Right. What he forgot is I have the CIO of that company on speed dial, so I called him up and I'm like, "What did you show my CEO?"
Thanks for being a good friend, Eric.
Right. And so then he said, "Well, I didn't actually show it. One of my staff was there. They showed this video. Let me show you the video." And he said, "You built that in 2 weeks." And my colleague laughed hysterically. He said, "On the backs of 4 years of scars on my back, changing the data
The hard
profile
reality
of our
came through,
company."
right?
Right. So he had done, the reason they were able to do some of these things at that point was because that person had the foresight to understand putting their data estate in order. Also had some foresight that in order to be able to move fast, you were going to have to standardize technology. That's the antithesis of the culture at my company. So, you have to, as you said, manage that expectation. And so I had to go back and explain some of what we could and couldn't do. And then out of that conversation, what I got from Rami is he's like, "Well, I don't really expect us to be able to do all that fast. I was just kind of surprised." He says, "I just want everybody to get excited about it. So can you just help me have everybody get excited about it?" Right? And so really having those conversations with your peers. Now, meanwhile, another one of my peers has an incredible vision for transformation of his function, and he believes in technology, and he doesn't care whether it's AI, standard automation. He just knows in order to get the margins out of his business has to have offerings that differentiate based on what the customer is willing to pay, and the only way he can create those offerings is through technology. Man, he's knocking the doors down with what's available today with AI. And that's part of the story too, is like making that transition from getting people excited and experimenting, which is the phase I think most of us are in at this point.
Yeah.
So measuring outcomes, it's probably early days to be doing it. The question is, are you spending appropriately for experimentation? Are you spending wildly? And then making that pivot towards starting to really evaluate what is it that you want to achieve? Like, what future outcome do you want for what part of your business? And really understanding the processes there and understanding where AI specifically, what's available today specifically, can go help make that transformation. And I think that pivot from chasing use cases, which tend to be siloed and inherently not going to have, the true value is going to be the use cases that create a new product, create a new business model, or cut across your organization. And making that pivot is challenging organizationally if everybody isn't in the mindset of doing so. So that's my...
So Naveen, I wonder if you could share, you have an opportunity in your role at Databricks to spend time with a number of CIOs as well, I'm sure. Have you found examples of primary use cases sort of building off of Sharon's point that maybe there's a first early capability lesson, skill set development that is a best practice? I mean, where would you start?
No, I think software development is a great place to start. We have most examples in most companies where 30 to 50%, at least for junior developers, there has been productivity improvements.
Yep. 30-50% is pretty big.
Yes, pretty big. And it reduces as you go up stack. I believe customer support was a great example that many companies thought is an easy slam dunk. Actually turned out to be not a great example.
Why is that?
It depends on the product, and it depends on the quality of the product and what the customer is expecting from you. For, I guess, B2C, it works, but for B2B customers, a lot of the customers are expecting a lot more efficacy in terms of the responses that they get, and the environments are quite complex. Take Databricks as an example. If you're building a customer support bot, you need to be able to answer really configurable questions around that environment, not just a generic question. So generic knowledge management questions are easy to answer, but actual specific questions around that configuration in this AWS environment for this Spark cluster is a very different question to answer. Yeah. And so what we are using as an example customer support case is actually educating and improving the knowledge base, building more knowledge articles as a result of AI, building case routing, case forwarding, and case forecasting as a result of AI, and then using it in Slack channels so that as agents are working, and not agents, the engineers are working on supporting the customers, we are making them more efficient and more effective as a result of that. So you can leverage AI, but you have to be thoughtful in how you use it. My preference is like you have jobs to be done and use the product management methodology to find what jobs are the most relevant that will be where you can use a combination of machine learning and Gen AI to improve or transform the way jobs are to be done.
Saket, do you have a use case you want to share that maybe we can unpack as well?
I think it's sort of consistent. Engineering is a classic first place to kind of go find efficiencies and productivity gains on. We've had more success with customer support, maybe on the low end, to your point. We see a ton of deflection happen there. The other use case that seems compelling, we've not completed our journey on that, is how do we make our sales teams more productive? For all the time that they have to do, they spend on researching on an account or understanding our product and its core capabilities and stuff, or when the books transfer at the end of the fiscal year or at the start of the fiscal year, transitioning all of that knowledge. How do we make it easier for our salespeople in a way wherein it's still respecting their experience. It's still sort of not having them now transfer across multiple systems, bring all of that information in one place. So whatever might have taken them 2 hours to prepare is possibly taking them much lesser time. It's just a second order separated from measuring, so that measurement of ROI is still very hard.
Yeah.
I can find those savings and I can say that my salespeople are more productive, but the measurement for sales people productivity is revenue that they bring in. And being able to connect to that level, I don't think we're there just yet.
Top of the funnel, we do have hard metrics for sales, which is primarily BDRs and SDRs
Sure.
for B2B companies, where we are seeing on SDR, so inbound, outbound emails, we can get the same efficacy of click-through and response rates as to a median SDR. And so for a growing company like ours, we are leveraging that opportunity to upskill our SDRs to move into more BDR roles, and that's the plan there.
Awesome. So we talked a little bit about leadership, people, process. Now we talked about a couple of use cases. Tell me now, or tell us now, what are sort of the technology gaps? Meaning, what do you still need to accomplish some of these use cases at scale?
For me, the biggest challenge has been quality. Essentially, you want really high efficacy of the results. You want to make sure that the results are safe, the results are accurate, and it's a non-deterministic solution. So how do you ensure the high efficacy? What at Databricks we are doing is we are using 2 different techniques with AgentBricks that hopefully you guys can experiment with and see whether that improves your efficacy of results. One is this notion of ALHF, which is agent learning based human feedback. And so you have now human inputs which help your agents. And the second is PGRM, which is essentially prompt-based reward mechanisms, where we are essentially bringing 2 different things together. This LLM as a judge and reward systems like Tau, and we are bringing those together in a single system where you can write a prompt which is fairly easy for you to build, but it has the flexibility of a LLM as judge, while it has the test time compute capabilities of a reward system. And hopefully you can get, some of our customers are seeing much better results as a result of that. For example, FactSet used fine-tuning on their SQL queries, and where it was able to use Llama models at a much higher efficacy for converting their SQL language into something that they can use as English, as an example.
You can tell he works at a tech company, right? Saket, what about you? Any technology gaps? Think of us as a venture capitalist that needs to place money somewhere. Where should we go?
I think the couple of things. One, I'll also speak to data. AI will only be as good as the data that you have, and it's less about the infrastructure around data. It's more around the governance of data, how you sort of managing all the different assets that need to be managed so that AI can give better results, the context around all of that. The second thing, which is becoming a hassle for us, is all things around security. And while we've created a whole lot of excitement for our workforce around go experiment with AI, now we find out people just signing up for these tools without our knowledge. And while we tell them not to put any customer or company data in it, I don't have the confidence that they're not, right? So being able to control some of that so that the threat vectors just suddenly expanded significantly for us. How do we make sure that we're on top of that? That's the other thing that's top of
great.
mind.
I knew that would come up. Security, always. So let's talk about, I'm sorry, did you want to share a technology problem? I wanted to talk about sort of the future role of a CIO, but I wanted to do it from the lens of the various roles that we hear coming about in the organization to make decisions. There's centers of excellence, there's steering committees. You mentioned security that brings perhaps the CISO into the conversation. Who is the ideal leader for AI projects in an organization?
I always think that the business needs to lead because technology follows what they actually want to accomplish. So, we talk about here, you've heard a lot about outcome-based billing models. Well, first you have to define the outcome that you want.
Yeah, what's the business goal?
And what are the KPIs and the metrics? And I find that if you have that right relationship between the business leader with the vision for where they're taking their org, then if you have the right leadership in your IT organization, you can pair those people up and they can go off and accomplish great things together. But without that vision, it's IT driving technology, because we may know enough about what's going on in the business to get a start, but how does that fit in the total ecosystem of your company? That's very hard to do without strong business leadership. So, so that's the first place.
But that's a partnership.
That is a partnership, and you know, you hear all of this about the IT leader becoming sometimes the HR leader, sometimes the services leader, because we have a lot of overlap in kind of what we do internally with what you might be doing for your customers. But at the end of the day, I still think there will always be an IT leader, despite, you know, listening for 20 or 30 years now about the CIO job being imminently disposable. But, you know, no one person can also be the expert in all those domains. And I think our role is, how do we help those in our organization who don't naturally come to the technology? How do we help them understand, you know, get them to spend the time, which I think there's pressure coming from other places now in a different way, maybe than, you know, 20 years ago, for them to understand that this technology is going to come in and change. And so I see right now it's kind of a circle often. I'll suggest something to my CEO that I really think is maybe the HR leader's role. But then, because it involves technology and that individual's not particularly, tech comfortable, then immediately it comes back around to me. So now I have to get out of my comfort zone of maybe suggesting. So I'm always saying, I'm trying to give them, you know, thought starters, but then never say, hey, here's the idea. You know, make sure they still have their ownership in it. And invariably, you come out with a better product than either side would have done independently.
I will very quickly just jump in. I do feel that from a CEO's vantage point, if there's one leader that should take accountability for AI across the company, it might be the CIO.
Yeah.
While it still needs to partner and co-sponsorship and all of that stuff, but the vantage point that we have of seeing everything that everyone else is doing
Across the organization.
sets us up well to drive that from a CEO's vantage point.
So we've got a minute left here. Let me ask one last sort of zinger question before we open it up. We've heard that the IT landscape is changing. There's $6 trillion worth of spend. We hear that it's end of SaaS, that the enterprise architecture is changing. Can you give a prediction in your own view what things will look like? What will the enterprise stack look like, let's say 3-5 years from now, when perhaps you have hundreds, if not thousands of agents there, this new non-human interface that's operationalizing, you're running in multiple language models. What does it look like?
Well, we are hoping that there's a persona-based solutions. So as an example, if you are a manager and you're doing all these tasks, let's say you're doing calibration, you're doing performance management, you're managing PTOs and expenses, you're managing equity planning, wouldn't it be great, instead of swivel chairing across multiple SaaS systems that you have to do today? You know, many of us have hundreds of SaaS systems and we have to manage them. You have a much more simplistic agentic system that helps you do that job much more effectively, and a lot of the work is done by the agents, but at the same time you are in the loop and deciding what the key decision points are. At least that is the vision that we are driving towards. It's still very early innings for us, but that would be one hope.
Naveen, can I push you on that? Does that mean that the current stack of providers, systems of record, I don't know, SAP, Workday, et cetera, are still there?
I think the CRUD systems are not going to go away that easily, because data has gravity, and there is compliance reasons as well. You need these systems. But you may obfuscate the system of engagement and the intelligence from those systems.
Yeah, I think the big challenge for those companies is going to be, we're going to be using them, as a data repository and for a certain level of the business logic, but there's a whole set of things we're paying for now we're not going to want to continue to pay for. And how does that change the economics of their business? But as I told you before, I find it really hard for people to define requirements. So this talk that vibe coding is suddenly going to replace SAP, Oracle, and all these, I think I'm not saying never, but I think we're a ways away from it. I wish it would come faster, because those are challenging relationships, I think, for all CIOs with those organizations. But
there
I think
are
it's going to take a
examples,
little
like,
time.
for example, this didn't even do AI. We built a custom solution for performance management, calibration, and all, and it's extremely loved by our employees.
Yeah. Well, I think slices are going to go.
We are still updating Workday, so we are not getting rid of Workday. But,
right. But the stuff that does supply chain complexity,
of course.
I think that's going to take time before anybody can really.
I think the lens has to be that experience simplification and focusing on the jobs to be done that you were talking about earlier. How can you decide what AI is going to do and what you're going to do? These systems of record are not going anywhere. They'll play a different role. But you'll still see the Salesforce and the Oracles and the Workdays around. That's my guess.
Great.
I think their growth and pricing, they are facing extreme pressures, to your point.
Yep. Great. Well, looks like we're out of time. Thank you, Naveen, Saket, and Sharon. And I think we're going to open it up for a couple questions. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to ask two questions, less than 30 seconds if possible. Introduce yourself, your name, and your company if you want, but keep it short and brief. Brian.
Hi, so my name is Brian. I'm an AI engineer. I used to work for JP Morgan. One of the main issues I saw was that when all these models came out, there was a lot of POC, a lot of experimentation. A lot of them were trying to solve the same thing, kind of redundant work. A lot of them didn't go to production. Kind of curious how you guys approach experimentation versus actually exploiting some of these research your teams are doing.
So we had a governance process. So any of these Gen AI projects had to come to a governance body. That governance body was very cross-functional. So it included legal, HR, IT. It was run, the top of that at Juniper was the CTO. And that doesn't mean nothing happened on the side, but people understood that this was a process they had to go through. So a couple things we could do. If people were asking for similar experiments, we could decide whether it was worth doing an A/B test, or that there was enough maybe bang for the buck on the other side to let two of them go through. More often than not, we would drive those teams together. If people were looking to buy different tools, we'd ask questions about whether or not that tool we initially had was appropriate. And in some cases, because it was very use case dependent, data you'd let go through a startup that hadn't made long-term decisions on its LLM might be okay for one use case, but not for another. So we had to make decisions about that. But that's how we managed the flow.
I have come to a place wherein I feel there's value in providing a low-friction horizontal platform for people to play in a safe and secure manner, because that builds the curiosity, some wins that they can get for themselves, and you want to tap into that kind of energy as well.
Question, Eva.
Thank you very much for the lot of insights. I was wondering how you manage the human perspective or the human in the loop. So how also in employee level, also on customer level. So how do you, of course, raising excitement as you mentioned, but the kind of onboarding phase and also habituation phase. So do you include any programs or maybe from behavioral science, any background?
Yeah, so I think what Saket was mentioning, actually, we are doing two different things. One is we have built these couple of platforms. We have Genie, which is really text to SQL, which is part of Databricks. We are enabling our finance people, our marketing people, and others to use that within standard data sets. And so they have built quite a few reports and ad hoc queries, and they are managing their business using it. We have also enabled agentic platform within safeguards for our employees. For example, our go-to-market team has built now 500 agents on the edge. And then we have a promotion process where some of those agents are then evaluated by a central body and promoted for more global use depending on how good they are. And so that gives you this notion of some level of experimentation at the edge. And the second thing we have done, which is like every employee wants to try and use AI in their work. And so we have enabled more AI products in the company depending on the role. And we have seen a high uplift of people using them just like you're using in your personal life.
Okay, we have one last question here. And if your response could be less than 30 seconds, that would be great.
I'll keep my question very simple. So I'm James. I work for a seed fund based in Boston. We focus on AI. We're seeing a lot of AI agents are replacing workflows, labor, or like almost full jobs in some capacities, while others are focused on becoming the single source of truth. It's a really weird pricing dynamic. How are you guys assessing like ROI, KPIs, and then more importantly, like pricing as you're seeing these very weird models?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's not a 30
think
second.
his question was longer than your response is going to be. So
I will say that, and just keeping it very brief and quick, and we can follow up offline as well. Getting to clear ROI, I think we're in varying stages of that journey, that maturity. I don't think I will say that confidently that I'm in a place where we're confidently able to measure ROI impact through all of this. At the lower end, adoption is clearly a proxy for value. So if we're rolling out things, we want to make sure that people are starting to use it, and we're measuring that at least, right? That gives us, hey, these are the things that we might want to invest more in. These are the things that we might want to kill as well. I will also say that maybe at an experimentation phase, AI still looks good, that it's displacing and replacing jobs. But at scale, there's a lot more that needs to happen.
fabulous. Okay, thank you, everyone. Great moderation here and great
thank
panel.
you.
Thank you so much.